Welcome to Hot Zone Updates. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more updates. The morning news in Manila broke with a dramatic headline: a Philippine Coast Guard vessel surrounded by larger Chinese ships at Reed Bank. On live TV, viewers watched as horns blared and the Filipino crew stood firm, outnumbered and blocked from their path. This was no routine patrol, it was a high-stakes standoff in the South China Sea, where one wrong move could spark a wider conflict. The Chinese ships, though not military, used their size and aggressive maneuvers to intimidate, forcing the smaller Philippine boat to document the harassment for the world to see. What should have been a simple resupply mission became an international incident, symbolizing the larger struggle for control in these contested waters. Each ship represented its nation's resolve: the Philippines defending its rights under international law, China enforcing its sweeping historical claims. The risk of miscalculation was high. A collision or escalation could draw in major world powers. As the sun set, the standoff dragged on, with Manila's officials in emergency meetings and diplomats making urgent calls to Beijing and Washington. The world watched, reminded that these disputes are not abstract, they affect real people and global stability. The question was not just who would back down, but what would happen next time. This was just one moment in a long, complicated battle for one of the world's most important bodies of water. The fragile peace in Southeast Asia was on full display, with every move scrutinized by the international community. The standoff underscored the stakes, sovereignty, security, and the balance of power in the region. For the Philippines, it was a test of national pride and the willingness to stand up to a larger neighbor. For China, it was about asserting dominance and reshaping the regional order. The world held its breath, hoping for peace but bracing for the next confrontation. The South China Sea remains a flashpoint, where local disputes have global consequences. The story was far from over. For Filipino fishing communities, the South China Sea is life itself. Generations have depended on these waters, but now, fishermen face harassment, chased away by Chinese vessels, their catches seized, their livelihoods threatened. This is more than economics, it's a fight for culture, dignity, and survival. On a national level, the dispute is about sovereignty and pride. The Philippines sees China's actions as a direct violation of its exclusive economic zone. Coast Guard patrols are a statement: this is our sea, we will not abandon it. The conflict stirs nationalism, with Filipinos demanding their leaders defend their rights. Globally, the South China Sea is a vital artery for trade. Any disruption could ripple through the world economy. The dispute tests the international rules-based order. If powerful nations ignore the law, it sets a dangerous precedent. Soldiers on remote outposts like the BRP Sierra Madre endure isolation and constant threat, their courage a symbol of national resolve. The conflict discourages investment and leaves vast energy resources untapped. Ultimately, this is a story of ordinary people caught in an extraordinary struggle for their homes, rights, and future. The stakes are deeply personal and profoundly global. The South China Sea is a global trade superhighway. 1/3 of all shipping passes through, carrying trillions in goods. Disruption here would send shockwaves through the world economy, affecting everything from energy to electronics. Beneath the waves lie vast oil and gas reserves, critical for Southeast Asia's growth and energy security. The sea is also a vital fishing ground, feeding millions, but overfishing and island building threaten this resource. Environmental damage adds urgency, as depleted stocks endanger food security for generations. Strategically, control of these waters means projecting power across Asia and beyond. China's artificial islands, bristling with military hardware, have changed the balance. The US and allies conduct patrols to challenge excessive claims and keep the sea open. The South China Sea is a battleground for trade, energy, food, and military dominance. Its stability is essential for global prosperity and peace. Every nation with a stake in the region is watching and preparing. The stakes are as high as the waters are deep. The world cannot afford instability here. The South China Sea dispute is a tangled web of overlapping claims. China asserts control over nearly the entire sea, citing historic rights marked by its 9-dash line. The Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan all claim parts of the sea, each with their own legal and historical arguments. The Philippines relies on international law, UNCLOS, to assert its rights within its exclusive economic zone. Vietnam presents historical evidence and occupies several islands, clashing directly with China. Malaysia and Brunei claim southern sections, while Taiwan's claim mirrors China's. This crowded field makes compromise elusive. With so many claimants, every negotiation is fraught, and every incident risks escalation. the path to resolution is anything but simple. Each nation uses history to justify its claims in the South China Sea. China points to ancient maps and texts, framing its claim as a restoration of lost territory. Vietnam and the Philippines counter with their own historical records and proximity. The result is a battle of maps and narratives, mutually exclusive and endlessly debated. UNCLOS was meant to clarify maritime rights, granting exclusive economic zones to coastal states. The core conflict, China's historic rights versus modern international law. Most of the world backs UNCLOS, but China insists its history is an exception. This clash of principles makes legal or diplomatic resolution incredibly difficult. In 2013, the Philippines took China to court, seeking clarity on its maritime rights under UNCLOS. The case didn't ask who owned the islands, but whether China's 9-dash line was legal. China refused to participate, claiming the tribunal had no jurisdiction. Despite the boycott, the Hague Tribunal ruled in 2016. China's historic claims had no legal basis. The court found China had violated the Philippines' rights and caused environmental harm. The ruling was celebrated in Manila and praised by many nations as a victory for international law. But China rejected the decision outright, calling it waste paper. The world now had a clear legal judgment, but no way to enforce it. The legal questions were settled, but the reality on the water remained unchanged. The standoff between law and power continued. The ruling became a symbol of the struggle for a rules-based order. For the Philippines, it was validation. For China, a challenge to its ambitions. The dispute entered a new, uncertain phase. Despite the Hague ruling, China doubled down, using gray zone tactics, aggressive but just short of war. Chinese Coast Guard and maritime militia harass Philippine vessels, using water cannons and dangerous maneuvers. The goal: intimidate and exhaust without firing a shot. The Philippines faces a constant dilemma: escalate or back down. China's artificial islands, now military outposts, have changed the strategic landscape. Environmental damage continues despite international condemnation. The gap between law and reality grows wider. The US and allies conduct joint patrols, but China's power on the water is hard to counter. The South China Sea is locked in a dangerous stalemate: legal rights versus physical might. Every day, the risk of miscalculation looms. Amid tension, diplomacy continues behind the scenes. ASEAN and China have spent years negotiating a code of conduct to manage disputes and prevent conflict. Progress is slow. ASEAN wants a binding agreement. China prefers a voluntary code. Critics say China uses talks to buy time while consolidating control. Bilateral talks between China and other claimants yield small agreements, but rarely address sovereignty. The US supports allies and pushes for a rules-based approach, backing diplomacy with military presence. Multilateral negotiations, bilateral talks, and great power diplomacy form a fragile effort for peace. The search for a solution is ongoing, but trust is scarce. Every step forward is met with new challenges. The region's future depends on dialogue, restraint, and international cooperation. The stakes could not be higher. The South China Sea dispute is a global test of trade, security, and the rules that govern nations. If power trumps law here, it could set a precedent worldwide. The sea is vital for global commerce. Any conflict would disrupt supply chains and economies everywhere. For East Asia's export giants, free passage is economic survival. The region is also a stage for US-China rivalry, with military posturing raising the risk of accidental conflict. The outcome will shape the future of the international order, law or might. If international law fails, other disputes may flare elsewhere. The struggle of nations like the Philippines and Vietnam resonates globally. They are on the front line of a larger contest. The world's eyes are on the South China Sea, where the stakes are nothing less than the future of global order. What happens here will echo far beyond these waters.